Welcome to Unmasking Social, where we talk about building real friendships and meaningful connections without masking who we truly are. I'm your host, Sharon Baum, a speech and language pathologist with an expertise in social thinking and how it relates to autism and ADHD, specifically with our teens and tweens. Let's dive in. Today's episode highlights a very important topic of bullying and how one responds to bullying. Today's autistic individual went on a long journey from being bullied on two fronts, for being autistic and for being accused of being Jewish. How he turned that around through his various interests and decided one day that, oh no, I feel like I'm seeing the same thing, and became a major activist for a community that is struggling right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Unmasking Social. Today, we have a big activist in the autistic community. His name is Charlie Keeble. Charlie, thank you for being here today.
My pleasure, Sharon.
And again, I know that we had numerous conversations before this podcast, so I got to learn a lot about you and how you went from being this child who knew that things were a little bit different with you. You didn't know why people were reacting to you in certain ways in your childhood. And that kind of seemed like the launch pad to where you are today and being this huge activist for the autistic community in very specific ways. Can you take us back, as hard as it may be, to the time when you were younger, when you felt like maybe things were different, when you noticed something was different, and how you navigated that? Because I know that schools don't always support us when we need them to support us in terms of our differences.
Well, going back, when I was very young, I was quite odd with my environment. I was often frustrated and fed up, but always obsessively attached and drawn to my hobbies and my personal interests. I didn't have much of a good time in school or even learn how to adjust to fit in with other people. A common autistic trait, autistic people don't integrate or connect with people on an emotional or mental level, but we're sort of drawn into ourselves. But over time, I learned to mature and become a bit more empathetic. And I have now probably got more social connections than I never thought I had. And, well, as far as my past goes, I was diagnosed autistic when I was 9.5 years old. I didn't accept the diagnosis at the time because, well, for me, a definition of a disability meant that you were, well, seen as this broken and defective creature without any use of the world. That is quite a negative view of disablement or even living with autism now as it was then. But as I grew up and started taking an active interest in learning about how my autism affects me, and I didn't properly accept it until I was 18, I started learning about how it affects me. And then a few years later, I started reading about the autism advocacy movements, both in the online community and in books. And I realized my autism may be a neurological condition that affects my faculties in communicating and developing relationships with people. Well, it definitely will not make me a broken and defective creature. As a matter of fact, I now front my advocacy with a mission to share with autistic people that they are not broken and defective creatures. They are perhaps stronger, more intelligent, more resilient, and more determined than most people you will ever meet. And I'm probably one of those many living examples.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because so many people are listening to this, including our neurodivergent teens and tweens and young adults and their families, professionals. And I think it's important to lean into that in terms of how society can sometimes make you feel broken just because there's something different. You're not conforming to a neurotypical standard. And even if you're not neurodivergent, sometimes you fall off this script, whatever that script is, whether it's do this, accomplish this, and then you feel like you're broken. And it's really unfortunate, Charlie, that you were feeling like that and society made you feel like you were broken, but you were able to come full circle and realize, wait, I'm not broken. I'm intelligent. I have a lot to give to the world. And it's so interesting because so many autistic individuals that I've met personally and that I've worked with have so much to give to the world. And we've discussed this even before this conversation about the infinite amount of creativity, the infinite amount of looking at things in a way where other people can never look at it in the same way and accomplish that much. And so I feel like that's such a great message to send to those who are struggling now, where they feel like, wait, what's my place? Am I broken? And the answer is you're not broken, right? It's just that people are sending messages to you that you are. Now, this messaging, though, that you received that you were broken, did this start early on in your life, or did it somehow take a life of itself as you got
Well,
older?
it was pretty much forced on me when I was young. Growing up, I was surrounded by all this level of support work in the forms of my teachers, my parents, and support workers. Although they were quite friendly and helpful, I got often irritated and frustrated by this common attitude of disability activism done by able-bodied people, where they tend to see us as objects of pity, and therefore they tend to patronize us and say, well, everything that we have to give you, this is all you're going to get in life. And based on that premise, we get told to just shut up and be grateful. Well, I don't take line of thought. And I remember reading about the time of the disability advocates of the 1990s here in the UK, where there was a series of protests and demonstrations calling for disabled people to have the same rights, access and benefits in life, like the right to have jobs, the right to own property, accessibility on public transport, and disability discrimination laws did eventually put a stop to all. And the disabled activists that I admired, well, they decided, well, if you're not going to help us the way we expect you to do and give us the right of liberty to live in harmony with you, well, then there's no point in pitying us at all.
Yeah, so that's so interesting. This messaging was received early on for you, where you were taught that, okay, this is the way that you should conform. And in a sense, it's almost like, okay, your liberties are taken away from you because you're told that this is it, right? You only can do X, Y, and Z, and you can't get past that barrier because this is what you're dealing with. But you're no stranger to people also othering you and feeling like you are in a different league of your own. And I know that you had spent time in your younger years even just trying to feel not othered because others were making you feel like you're somebody who is just in an island of their own. And they noticed differences about you early on, not just socially, but just the fact that you would look different and that you were in school and you were in a school, I believe it was in, I forgot which area, I'm very bad with my geography, in England. But you were in an area in England where you went to school in your earlier years where they couldn't understand that you looked different. And not only look different, but also acted different because socially you were just different than the others. For all those listening who are going through this right now, I hate to use the word bullying, but it's a fact of life, right? Where people do get bullied. What was your experiencing like when you were in that school and people were just treating you like you are the other person? You don't fit in. You're not welcome here.
I probably got bullied with an intent to hound me out of school in two simultaneous ways. First, I got bullied in school because of the way I supposedly acted weird, struggling to interact with people, and I struggled to keep ahead of the class. And it was quite a badly organised school. Well, it was based in Bethnal Green in the London Borough of Tower Hamlets, which was around where I was born. And I lived there from 1985 to 1999. And it was quite a very destructive and dysfunctional school. The bullying towards me because of my autism was quite apparent from the get-go, treated like weird. I even received a very patronising and belittling type of a curriculum where I was not given anything meaningful or challenging to do in relation to what the subjects of my school learning programme. In the UK, we have the secondary school programme, is known as the General Certificate of Secondary Education, the GCSE. And through my GCSEs, right up until when I left at 15, I didn't do anything advanced that was suitable for which made me employable. And I left that school disadvantaged and without any useful skills to sell to an employer, and in particular to my autism, where I struggled to interact socially with people, and I didn't even have anyone good or friendly to get along with there. I just couldn't navigate my way through the job market. And another way, which eventually led to me becoming an advocate for you and your fellow Jewish people, is the way in which I ended up becoming the way in which I got bullied in school by being accused of being Jewish.
Terrible accusation, by the way. Terrible accusation to be accused of being Jewish. Yeah.
My school happens to be within an area of London that happens to have the largest Bengali Muslim diaspora, and about 40% of pupils in my school were Bengali Muslim. And I wasn't told about this at the time, about anti-Semitism and just how hateful they were towards Jews. Now, One day, with no intention of actually revealing it, they discovered that my middle name was Zenon, my full name being Charlie Zenon Keeble, which comes from my Polish grandfather, Zenon Gajbatowicz. He was born in Wilna, which is now in modern-day Lithuania, in 1925. And he and my mum's named me after him because she would have wanted me to embody the fighting and the courageous traits that he had, which I'm very glad to have got. And it even shows today, of course. Now, when they discovered that my middle name was Zenon, the Bengali Muslims in particular at this school started making a big deal out of my middle name, asking, Sir, why is Charlie here? His middle name is Zenon. He's of Polish origin. Have you brought a tune? I remember looking at them thinking, what the hell are these people making such a big deal about my middle name? And being that I was on the autistic spectrum and they had an autism support program there, they were obliged to clarify to me the meaning behind how to navigate life. And I wasn't given any but to avoid any embarrassment to seeing their diversity and inclusion policies failing miserably in front of their paymasters, they deliberately kept me from learning about the meaning behind those anti-Semitic slurs against me. But I could tell that there was something going on when years later I became politically active and started taking an interest in Jewish culture. And I can tell by several distinct symptoms from flashbacks, trauma that I had in that school. One day I was doing the flag of Israel, for which I was doing for the flags of countries for the geography teacher. When my head teacher saw that, she said to me, don't do Israel, snatched a drawing of me and chucked it in the bin, and then stormed off saying, don't do that again. No clarity and no formal answer, even though I tried to tell her, and she just told me, shut up, don't give me a question. A year later, I borrowed my nan's copy of the Diary of Anne Frank, and I brought it with me to school one day, and I read it in the classroom with nobody in there. My teacher came in, saw me reading it, and he angrily snapped at me, put that book away. I looked up and said, why are you angry with me for reading Anne Frank? Instead of giving me a simple, straight answer, he shouted hands this close to my face and shouted straight at me, put that book away or else I'll throw it in the bin. I got my own back on. He sent me off to collect the register from the reception, and on my way back to the classroom, I took it out of the folder and threw it in the bin. He's a right bastard, I can tell you. I remember one in the corridor when a couple of Bengali kids were walking up that way, and they shouted back at me, Polish bastard, Polish bastard. And I responded to them by saying, Bengali bastards, Bengali bastards. And there's my teacher over there saying, don't say that. And I said to them, did you not hear what they just said? And he said to me, well, whose fault is that, Charlie? You shouldn't have told the school that your middle name is Zenon. And I just looked at him and said, God, you're bloody useless. Well, that experience has taught me one thing in life, that the anti-racist left is corrupted and plays favourites with who they defend, depending on what characteristics they favour about a group.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you really went through a lot in your younger years in terms of dealing not just with people bullying you and othering you, but also not understanding what exactly was going on. Nobody was giving you explanations as to why what you're doing was a problem. And also, you were leaning into your interests. For example, the Diary of Anne Frank interested you. And in a neuroaffirming way of what we think of today, if that's something that interests you, that you should be able to read that. Or if something related to another country interests you for whatever reason, and you're engaging with the flag, that should be something that's supported and encouraged. Because again, at the end of all of this, as well as the goal is to make sure that our neurodivergent individuals with autism can really go after their passions, because it's the passions that drive them. It's the passions that let them achieve. It's the passions that let them contribute in such great ways to society in the ways that you're contributing. And so not given those explanations as to the why, when you were merely looking for a why, it can really be a disservice to people. Because again, when it's hard enough for a young child to understand why something is happening when it doesn't add up to them and when they feel like people are coming after them. But then it's even harder when you're autistic and you can't really understand the social nuances and no one is making a connection for you as to why what you're doing is a problem. So then you're going to continue to do it, right? Because it's like, wait, I don't think there's a problem with this. Nobody's explaining what the problem is. So it goes from the flag to and frame to you pushing back. I want to ask you a little bit about that pushing back, because so many individuals on this podcast that listen to this, whether it's the families or the neurodivergent individuals, always want to advocate. So, and as a professional who worked with this population for so many years and continues to work with them, they want to learn how to advocate. Everybody advocates in a different way. But what I see from you, Charlie, is that you took what happened to you and somehow over the years, you built up this advocacy muscle where you weren't going to just shy away and just say, okay, thank you guys. It was nice having you. It was nice being in school with you. Teachers, thank you so much for your support. But it seems like you channeled this into a real advocacy mission that led you into this politically motivated activism mission. And that is true advocacy, is really leaning into those things that matter to you and then actually speaking up. So what would be, if you have any words of advice for our neurodivergent teens and tweens, or even young adults, right, who are trying to speak up for things? They're a little bit nervous about it. Of course, in the world we live in, it's always concerning to speak up for things you believe in. But what advice would you give to them in terms of taking their advocacy to the next level like you did, if they want to?
Well, I would say learn to step away from the comfort zone, being behind a keyboard. Let me give you a hypothetical example. You advocate from social media, wanting to make yourself heard through this account you've made. You're doing good content, you've got a good followership, and you're making a very, very good individualistic personality out of your advocacy. And as the saying goes, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. Don't try to conform to a collective within the autism movement. Stand out and be like a tall tree amongst a big forest. Your fruits will shine as long as you refuse to go into hiding. And having lived through the frustrations of growing up through life that way, I decided I'm not going to hold back and go through, stick to one type of advocacy from one point of frame of reference, which fight my battles. So move up a step further and try to go from being an online advocate to a frontline advocate. I learned some very useful skills in how to be a frontline activist when I started to join my local Conservative Party. In fact, I've been a political party activist for the Conservatives for the last 10 years this year. And through that time, I've learned how to knock on doors, how to communicate with the public. And in the process, well, I've now transferred those skills onto through my autism advocacy, making, content that's more inspiring to say you've got a lot of hope and determination yourself, for which you've got a unique niche, but you can make it into something extraordinary that people will look up to and inspire to. And I've done this through a combination of things, getting on the front line. In fact, I've combined my passion for autism advocacy with my passion for Judaism and standing up for the state of Israel. And it's a year and a half ago, I did it initially from online, but then I started going on protest marches. There's an advocacy group called Stop the Hate, which I've been joining on the front line on these counter demonstrations, on the hate marches in London, shouting back and showing off myself, wearing these vibrant T-shirts, which have all stand out spectacularly in a very unique way to say, I'm autistic and a friend of Jews. It's
so fascinating, Charlie. You share so much in there that ties back to also using social in a way where you're able to transfer it to different contexts, because I know that you didn't necessarily have that much support from the school system or from the school setting. And in fact, in some ways, you were told to not engage in a lot of these things. You were told to shy away from your interests, but you didn't care. You kind of leaned into your interests, leaned into your passions. And it didn't just stop, as you said, the keyboard phenomenon where you're able to go on social media. You then transferred that social convention and then you adapted it to the going from, like you said, place to place, protesting in the streets, using all these different social nuances that are really challenging across different contexts. But it seems like you almost were able to have your mind shift to all these things without direct support. Whereas individuals that I work with sometimes need that direct support to kind of think about all the different settings that they're going to be in. Because on social media, it's very different than when you're outside in the streets. And one of the things that individuals face when they're outside in the streets is people start seeing them. People start noticing them. Some people just don't like what you have to say, whether it's you or me or whoever it may be. There are always going to be people that disagree with you, right? And there are always going to be people that say, hey, what are you doing? This is so silly. Or there will be people that embrace you for the same token, right? And so I find that one of the things that I think not just neurodivergent, but also neurotypical individuals face right now, especially in those pivotal years that were so hard for you and hard for many of us, honestly, the teens and tweens and young adults, is that there is a fear associated with that. They're trying to be social. They're trying to go after their passions. And for the ones that are politically motivated like you and want to be this activist, they are scared of the naysayers. They are scared of the people that are going to come at them and say, well, you're this or you're that, or you're doing this wrong, or you're in some cases accusing them of heinous things that they're really not. They're just really good, genuine people that are trying to be out there like you. Is there anything that has buffered you that's made you, I mean, you have thick skin in general, that's buffered you and made you stronger so that all these other individuals that are sitting here listening to this and are wondering, well, how do I go about this? How do I do this? I'm going to another social setting. A lot of people are going to see me and they may not have kind words to say to them because they don't agree with in this very tense political world we're living. Do you have any things that have helped you gain another layer of strength?
Well, I think I probably learned how to handle another layer of stress by taking it one step at a time. First step is to go into that place and introduce yourselves to the people. I first started by talking to my fellow members and asking about how to deal with the social setting of this. How do I do this? Like, for example, if I knock on a door and someone says, I don't like conservatives, get off my lawn, how do I respond to that? Some people, most people, autistic people would respond to that in a shriveling wreck and probably, backtrack on that. But I learned from my friends that you can get around that by diffusing the situation, by stepping back and separating yourself from the danger, or rather the anger of that person, and saying that you don't, and that is completely unlawful. You shouldn't be saying that. And I don't think you should be policing people's views in that awful way, or even keep trying to weigh people off like there's some sort of, rotten filth to be discarded. So separate yourself from that angry person and take a step back and turn to your colleagues to ask about how to handle, both how to handle being in that situation and learn how to keep yourself cool. As an autistic person, that worst trait is also a useful trait, which is that I don't process or can gather that I'm in a dangerous situation. It may be dangerous to some other people, but because I don't process the danger, I don't get easily offended or angry as such, but I do step back and keep my cool. And I think you can take things a bit further then. Like on the protest that I do, I often share and boast about how lovely it is to say that Jews are very, very, the Jewish people and the state of Israel is a very, very good cause to stand by. And there's things I know that for which they have give integrity and show how magnificent that I can be as an autistic person.
Yeah, I mean, I think to touch upon a couple of really important things. One being that you consulted other people while you were doing this and probably continue to consult other people on how to navigate complex situations. We all have to do that, right? We never can act on our own, especially when you're engaging in such tense situations. It's important to problem solve with other people. And I think that that's something that my neurodivergent teens and tweens and young adults can really benefit from as they go through this. They start learning, oh, wait, I can lean on this person. I can lean on this person because again, advice is important. Of course, you want to take advice with a grain of salt because the advice won't always be the advice that is appropriate for you. But forming this tribe of people that you could ask, oh, wait, so what if this situation occurs? Like you had mentioned, what if the person says, no, I'm not interested. I don't want to hear from you while you're going. Does that mean that's the end of the conversation and you just move forward? Or are there alternate ways to approach that without getting in their face, right? So I think it's important to lean, like you said, on other people, which is what you've been doing. You haven't been doing this on your own. You've been doing this as a group of people. which I think is very different than if you would operate this on your own and you would have nobody leading you and all your questions would just kind of be sitting there. And then that could actually cause you to shut down. Any of us can shut down if we're stuck and don't know what to do next. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but forming this community of people that can lean on each other, that can consult with each other, that can problem solve together has probably added some oomph and some excitement and maybe even less stress when stressful and chaotic situations arise, which they tend to do when you're a political activist, right? Truly.
Yes, it quite does. It does come as well when you form friendships with people. You can start with a small circle because I can't handle big groups of people to start with, but then I can grow that circle as I need connections. In fact, I'm actually quite good at networking. I might be socially awkward sometimes, but I do know how to connect with and expand on my connections. Hence my ever-growing list of alternating creative special interests.
You have a whole laundry list of those special interests. If I remember correctly, it's a bunch of interests. You're creative, you design, you also are a political activist by day, but then by night, you're also designing all these different things that are related to your special interests, including the menorah that you had showed me in previous times that we conversed. The menorah, I believe, that represents autism and Judaism, I believe, intersecting.
Oh, yes,
right?
that's right. It's right here on this badge.
Right there. For those who can't see, there's a menorah and then there's the autism symbol in between. And there was a rationale for that because part of your political advocacy and why you feel connected to fighting for Jews is you had told me that you see a similarity between Judaism and autism.
Yes, that's correct. I could give you a full list. Yeah. Now, for the autistic people out here listening to this and your Jewish allies, well, one thing that I've often told Sharon is about the intertwined connections between autistic people and Jewish people throughout the ages. And, well, many years after I had gone through that anti-Semitic framed bullying at school, and then I started to see, well, in between the anti-Semitic bullying and then me becoming the autistic Zionist that I'm well known for today, I read a book written by Steve Silverman called Neurotribes. It's the most comprehensive to frame autism culture, not how autism affects you, about people who were there. The psychology of autism, the social inventions of autism, the neurodivergent civil rights activists. And surprisingly, I discovered that there were many interesting Jewish connections. The first autism diagnosis in 1905 by a Russian Jewish lady, Leo Kanner, a Hungarian-born Jew who was living in Maryland, in 1943 started the first autism advocacy movement. There's also one of my personal favourite disability advocacy story that is more of a general disability story, not just autism, is the creation of the Paralympic Games. Yes, that's right, the famous disability sports game. It was started by a German Jewish refugee called Dr. Ludwig Guttmann. He arrived in England in 1944 after fleeing Germany, being stripped of his family, being stripped of his nationality after being from the Nuremberg laws. And he was stationed at the Stoke Mandeville Hospital in England, and he was tasked with treating wounded soldiers who were coming from the front line. Now, around that time, wounded service personnel were expected to be left to die in hospital. It's because in correlation with the Holocaust, it was widely accepted, and his Jewish custom Tikkun Olam, and the Jewish pride on keeping people alive to love life and live it to the full, he decided, no, I'm going to let these service personnel die. So he brought in sports activities into the hospital to mentally and physically rehabilitate them, to choose to push back the desire to die and carry on and show them that they are not broken and defeated unless they choose to be in suffering and in pain. And they will be their own man if they look after themselves and save themselves. 4 years later, in 1948, just as the Olympic Games came to London, Guttmann decided to create his own national games on the grounds of the hospital, which became known as the Stoke Mandeville Games. Now, this story is told in a film made by the BBC in August 2012 called Best of Men. I recommend you watching yourselves because it's a very inspiring and powerful story. Made me feel that, you know what, Jewish people and disabled people are one of a kind. They are very, very blessed and enamored with a desire to live life to the full, and they will not be beaten. They're invincible, they're indomitable, and they will go forth and make themselves strong and determined in whatever ambition they have. And that extends into Israel today, where I think of Israel as a metaphorically autistic country. One of the most successful forms of inclusion in Israel that I reckon the world should take inspiration from is Unit 9900. It's from the IDF's Unit 9900. There's this post for which I made my Instagram page. I'll you for your listeners to get to know.
Yeah. That's a picture of the unit, you said? Oh, for those who are just hearing on audio, it's a picture of, have you heard of the Ultimate Autistic Intelligence Agency?
Yes, it's called Unit 9900. It was created first as a division of the IDF in collaboration with Mossad, and their specialities are analysing terrain for military strategies, collecting visual data from satellites and ground forces, and interpreting those maps. The autistic and disabled Israelis are integrated into the IDF through a program called Rom Rachot, which means seeing into the future, founded in 2013 by two Mossad veterans who value neurodiversity in the Israeli intelligence community. And among the four key strengths that I, as an autistic person, would fit in very gladly within that organisation include open thinking, sharp observation, hyper-focus on subjects, detail-centric analytical abilities. Brilliant, don't you think?
Yes, 100%.
Yes. And one of Unit 9900's best achievements is in combating terrorism, is writing the algorithm for those exploding pages that took out Hezbollah's communications network in last year. Yes, the attack was so precise that it famously blew the bloody bolts off the enemy. Paraphrase Michael phrase from the Italian Job. Well, having learned that, I realised, you know what? From what I've seen, the Jewish people are definitely the best friends of autistic people, and we owe it to them. In fact, I think autistic people have a lot of debt of gratitude to you Jews for making us live and thrive. And as the logo of my company goes, autistic lives thrive on Zionism.
Yeah, that's just so fascinating. And I'm sure there are a lot of people listening that may have not even seen the connection before. You actually have had to speak to me a couple of times to really learn it out and explain it to me. But just, first of all, there's the historical piece, right? It really makes sense when you speak about it. All the individuals who are Jewish who started noticing this different expression of social and identified autism. And then it kind of led into people advocating. And like you said, there's even a unit, I didn't even know about this until you shared it here on the podcast, of individuals with autism who are working day and night to figure out very complex Middle Eastern Mossad-like, no, actually in the Mossad, right, to really pay attention to the detail because of the hyper focus and the attention to detail, to really helping out that unit with figuring out what the enemy might be doing. So they're basically, it sounds like, using the autistic voices in a way that could really help, because they know that they could really support them in a lot of ways because of their ability to use their brains in ways that are different than the neurotypical individual. And so that's something that obviously you can relate to. And this is what I think maybe helps you with the cause at large and trying to continue to fight for Jewish people, as you see that they are, like many other groups, but especially in the last couple of years, the Jews have faced a lot of anti-Semitism, something that you don't want to really stand for anymore. And you've shown that all over, whether it's in your protests or on your Instagram.
Rancid form of hate that completely stunts people's minds.
I'm sorry?
It completely stunts people's minds.
Yeah. That what stunts people's minds? That you're advocating so much, or that this is the hate that's been done?
Well, it's both the hate and the way it stunts people's heads and effectively turn them into, well, zombies with a grievance fixation. And the Jews, well, they don't choose grievances. They choose a determination to thrive. And that's what I think is why Jews often get left out in a race argument when standing up for justice. There's a chapter in a book in which I write this. One aspect.
Is this in the Autistic Conservative?
Yes, that's right.
Oh, sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah, no, Autistic Conservative, right?
Which I talk about how the oppressor-oppressed system is also used to deny friendships or harmony between people. And in the process of that, it's created this system whereby, rather than in which the anti-racist left and all those other civil liberties activists have abandoned the love and mutual respect for each other in favour of gathering your grievances and using that to pit against each other and fight one another. Hence why we're in this midst of political violence into a civil rights crisis in which we're all in a state of cacophony and dysfunction.
Yeah, it's interesting that you label it as cacophony. I am saying it in a different way than you. Cacophony. Can't get it right. Cacophony.
Although you Americans probably pronounce it cacophony.
Yeah, cacophony. Yeah, but basically cacophony dysfunction. I think a lot of people feel on edge right now in general, just here in the UK, in the world, because again, there's the alt-right, the alt-left, and it seems like people are very limited in terms of expressing themselves, especially in big cities. You're in a big city, I'm in a big city. So sometimes it gets hard because you want to share different experiences and not everybody's going to agree on everything. I have things that I like that have nothing to do with the right and left. Neither of them can offer what I want. And then there's the in-between. And I feel like it's so hard because we challenge our individuals who are neurodivergent to stay away from that. And I had a podcast about that black and white thinking. We challenge them to see the world in color, nuance, and all the different ways that you can think about something in a multitude of ways and thinking. But then, of course, as politics is scripts start forming. And it's, well, do you agree with everything on the script? If you don't, then you're this or you're that. And it's interesting because I am labeled so many different things by so many different people, depending who it's coming from. And the interesting fact is that I'm not even registered in my country as a Republican or a Democrat, which is basically both parties. So I don't know what I am. I'm just trying to be real, authentic in myself, essentially.
Well, one of the key principles of my autistic conservative objectives is to embrace political diversity. Although I'm conservative, I do accept different strands of the spectrum. And I believe that political diversity should be embraced in the same level as the neurodivergent spectrums should be seen. After all, we're all one type of autistic person, so let's gather all people into unity and harmony with each other and embrace a diversity of thoughts and ambitious ideas to make our country great and strong.
Absolutely. I mean, the unity and harmony piece that you mentioned is so integral to all of this because I think what's happening is that a lot of people don't feel or feel separate from each other, or everyone feels siloed. And just bringing together this unity is so beautiful, especially when people do have different ideas. And Charlie, some of the best conversations that I've had, and I don't know if you feel the same way, had been with people that had completely different opinions. And I was able to learn so much about them in terms of them sharing about why they feel that way. And when I finished listening to them, I was like, oh, now I understand why they feel that way. They want this, they want this, they want this. These things are not being given to them by whoever it may be. And that's great. But unfortunately, it is tense, but I think we owe it to the world. And Charlie, you're doing a really big job. You have a really big role in this space, much bigger than me, because you're out there much more than I am in the streets in terms of what you believe in. And you're really out there in many ways, whether it's social media, whether it's out there in the streets, whether it's writing books, Autistic Conservative, and also I like your puzzle book as well, and also creating all these new fun things that can support the neurodiverse world while also linking it to your special interest, which is one of your special interests, which is the connection with Judaism and creating all the cups, the Neurozyme cup, which is beautiful, and so many other things. But at the end of the day, Neurozyme is chai. Exactly. For those who don't know, chai can mean either thigh, right? 18, symbolic of Judaism, or it can mean an actual chai tea. But in so doing, you're merging all these things in a very loud world that is not always happy with any of us, right? There's nobody that's happy with anybody fully. And I know in another podcast, we were speaking about how sometimes on some days, very few people are going to like you. On other days, so many people are going to like you. It really depends on the day and what's going on in those moments in the world at large, but also in people's personal lives. So I feel like one thing that you've done that is fascinating is that you have embraced people. You've embraced a community. You've embraced a community where you even write for things that are related to your special interests. You produce different artistic things related to your special interests. You go out there, but you also ignore loud noise. You're able to, like you said something interesting earlier about the danger, how one of the good things that you have, it could be a strength and a challenge as well, is that danger isn't always so alarming to you, right? And because of that, you're able to lean in and you're able to say, hey, whatever. Okay, paddle rolls off my back. You want to come after me? And I think that this is such an important message of the rolling off phenomenon, because you have so many messages that you can impart to our younger generation. And I think there are so many that want to speak up, so many of our autistic teens, tweens, young adults that do have nuanced perspectives on a lot of this. And like you said, they do want to persevere. They do want to be determined. They want to do great things. And I know that because I speak to them and they have big dreams. And so I don't know if everybody could be like you, Charlie, and just saying, okay, I'll just let the hate roll off. But you did mention that one of the things that you think is important is to create these communities so that at least if you can't let these things roll off, you have a community that you can speak to that can support you when you feel like people are kind of coming after you. And so, and in this community that you formed, do you go to them in general for advice, for support, to organize different ways of maybe addressing this?
Well, I do go to these organizations to ask for advice and even learn about ways how to advocate, be a better advocate. I've learned from, let me think of an example. I have used my time with the Stop Hate team to learn how to advocate in a way by learning how to use good and effective buzzwords on banners and how to communicate to the public. And I've even probably shared a few ideas with them.
That's great. So it seems like you're also building up your advocacy. You want to learn how to become a better advocate, which is great because I think that sometimes people think about advocacy about just going to a rally, right, and speaking up and not really thinking about how to extend that and to become better at it and to really elevate it. But you're not stopping here. You want to become better at it.
Yes, I do. Yeah, here's another example. There's this online organization called OCT7. A friend of mine from Instagram introduced me to them, where I gave a talk about the connection between autistic people and Jewish people. That was a very good presentation. In fact, I actually gave a speech outside London's most well-known synagogue. It's in North Finchley, and this was on the Bibas family's funeral in Israel. I gave a speech. My friend Maxine arranged for me to be a speaker at a vigil where I talked to the local Jewish community about the connections between how thankful I was for those Jewish people, making autistic people gain advances in life. And in the process, well, I enjoyed that gig so much. I think I probably used some of my skills from what I've been doing on Instagram, where I've done the commentary videos, to my perspective on the events of the news and what's been going on during the last 2 years since October 7, to talk about how much this autistic Zionist movement has helped added a bit of sparkle to the Jewish advocacy movement. So I've actually been proving myself to be a very, very eccentric social media activist. I'm even trying to take it one step further. I've got a friend who's a film producer based in Poland. Well, used to be in Poland. He's now made aliyah to Israel because anti-Semitism in Poland has gotten just as bad. Despite they have a strong resistance to migration from Islamic countries, Jew-hating Islamic countries, I pitched to him some ideas about doing a documentary film of what I've been doing as an advocate and to make myself bringing my message about the autism and neurodiversity with a touch of Judaism to the wider world. I've already become famous in a viral video where I showed off 3 T-shirts. And well, I've already become quite an eccentric advocate that I've probably raised a lot of hope for autistic people, in specifically the Jewish ones. I've heard of a few autistic Jews come out giving me their gratitude for being so brave and valiant in the face of overwhelming hatred. In fact, I would happily stand outside the Israeli embassy in London with a sign saying, I'm autistic, not Jewish. Ask me why I stand with Israel.
That could lead to a lot of questions. I think that sometimes when people stand out and just say, I'm here, ask me questions, people are usually a little bit more comfortable just saying, oh, yeah, what are you doing here? What is your connection? And you've done things like that before. I've seen in some of your videos where you stand out.
Yes, you've seen me carry a couple of banners around. In fact, I've actually made quite a few photogenic banners. And of course, there's the T-shirts. In fact, I'm wearing one of them right now under my shirt.
Oh, one of the T-shirts? That's a T-shirt that,
This is one of them. See?
Well, it seems that for autism to succeed, a dash, and there's a Jewish star in the middle of the autism, dash of Judaism is essential. Okay. Yeah, so that goes in line with your thoughts, which is that you feel like for you, I know you had mentioned that Judaism or the principles, the core tenets of Judaism motivated you because of the act of self-determination and perseverance is something that you embrace, that you feel like it's important to be resilient, right? Even when the chips don't look so great, it's important to keep going and push yourself until you continue to push yourself.
It's actually based on a saying by Hans Asperger, who once famously said, "It seems that for success in science or art, a dash of autism is essential." And me being quite good at playing with words, well, this sounded like a good play on those words.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I mean, I think that one of the key takeaways from all of this is that I think that the autistic community as individuals, because again, if one person with autism, as you said, and Dr. Stephen Shore, who I admire and has been on this podcast, says that repeatedly. He himself is a big advocate in the autism world and grew up with his parents not knowing what was going on with him, but they knew somehow intuitively how to help him and support him. And it's so true because, again, you will have individuals like you, Charlie, who want to go out there maybe not as a conservative, but maybe as someone who's not a conservative, somebody who's more like a progressive, right? But every individual needs to lean in or should feel comfortable leaning in to their passion, even if it's not the cost of, but even if it's a social risk in the sense that others may not be happy with you. That's just a part of life that you can't keep everybody happy. And I've met so many autistic individuals that are people pleasers as well. And they don't want to ruffle any feathers, but there's a passion, there's a fire burning in them where they want to go out, they want to do the things that you're doing. And I think, Charlie, you could be someone who can really be motivating to the younger generation. Not that you're not part of the younger generation, you're still young enough, but the even younger generation of people who feel like they want to go out there, they want to show people that they're autistic, but also have a certain passion, they have a certain identity, and they want to really be a genuinely political activist. And you could be a motivation to any of them, whether they're thinking along your lines, like you mentioned, political diversity, right? Whether it's supporting the individuals who may have different ideas and are not really modern day conservatives, or maybe feel more related to the progressive agenda, even though that's something that you don't see as connected to autism. But it sounds like your goal is to really amplify all these voices so that people can actually start speaking up more, because I don't think we have enough autistic advocates that are in the streets speaking. That's just my perception, but you have more of a pulse on.
Yes, indeed I do. And I relish it.
So you really believe that everybody, right, who should just keep going, try to put themselves out there in these situations, whether it's on social media, if that's something they want to do. Of course, we're not going to push people to do things they don't want to do. But if they really have something burning inside them that makes them want to be an advocate or an activist, whether it's a political activist or an activist for something related to that, they should
yes, every
their
person
community.
out there should find the space and the strength to liberate their own gifts. That is what brings wealth and prosperity to your life.
Liberate their own gifts.
Yes,
like
that's
that.
right. One component of my autistic conservative objectives, I'll show you your listeners on YouTube, the book.
Yeah,
Yes,
my
right.
autistic
It's what
conservative
it is.
objectives. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of my biggest principles are guiding moments of autistic conservatism comes from the works of Adam Smith, the famous Scottish philosopher who invented liberal economics with his book, The Wealth of Nations. It was once believed around before his time that real wealth came from when countries, nations accumulated vast amounts of gold and precious metals. Well, Adam Smith thought differently. He believed that real wealth comes from liberating people's gifts. For example, and in particular, an autistic person or anyone on the different strands of the spectrum has a gift to liberate, they should show it off and in the process use that to become a rich and strong person. And one example is my company, Neurozion. I created this initially as a sideline to my advocacy for the Jewish people. In fact, during the course of my protests in standing up for the Jewish people, I realised, well, my T-shirts made me quite distinct. I should probably try taking it a step further. And I've always been ambitious in my activism and about my autism advocacy. And I've always had this driving ambition to be an entrepreneur. And I realized, well, if my channel has created an extraordinary niche that people would want to have for themselves, and I'm leading other autistic people out there, I should start a shop, an online shop in which to sell this gear. Initially, I started off with T-shirts and this badge and a video which I made in May this year, showing whilst I was still laying the groundwork for Neurozion. I created that video just to show off some samples off to friends. I didn't expect it to become wildly visible to a wider audience, but what I had neglected was that Instagram has a built-in algorithm whereby videos shorter than 3 minutes will be recommended to new people who don't follow you. In the process of that, the video ended up going wildly circulated to other people. First, I got 1,000 views in the first half hour, 10,000 views by the end of the day, and 500,000 by the end of the week. After which, I'd then become this massive viral internet sensation. And of course, you probably followed me from that as well. And one thing that I learned was also a very, very good business mistake. Do not advertise and show off your concept work unless you've got shop ready for which to sell the goods. The messages that they just went ballistic. I got lots of people wanting to get their own. Right. And I had to basically come up with a suitable business model and a manufacturing service for which to make the T-shirts. So I got quickly to work on buying a Wix account to set up the website. For reference to your listeners, they can buy them from www.neurozion.com. And I have all the products mostly made on a print-on-demand service. And it's quite economical for me because, well, say, for example, you in America, well, like I know you did, I can have the production facilities scattered across the world by a print-on-demand service. All they do, I upload the art and they print it onto a product like this mug. Cool. They distribute it to you from another location.
Yeah, it came all the way from the transatlantic through the waters. I got my Neurozion. Thank you so much. Yeah, you shipped it all the way here. Yeah, but before you wrap up,
morning. I hope you've been hosting coffee mornings with a cup of spice.
Yeah, when I'm not drinking my Dunkin' Donuts coffee and I actually prepare my own coffee and use it. But unfortunately, sometimes when I run out to work, I just buy a coffee. But yes, those are nice cups that keep everything warm. But before we wrap up, Charlie, you've shared a lot of information. I think that you can be really inspiring to the next generation or to our current generation, because we're in the same millennial group of people who feel a little shy, right? To speak up, to advocate, to go after their passions because of fear of rejection, a fear of what are people going to say. And I think that you've summed it up really well, which is that you can find your group, you can consult with people. Charlie's available for all those who need a consultation. I know I'm not putting you on the spot, Charlie, but I'm saying he's a model of someone who just saw what was happening in his life, it seems like. And instead of saying, okay, you know what, I went through these terrible experiences, people didn't understand me, people were bullying me. You decided to take action when you saw that these things were happening to other groups of people and you didn't like it very much. And you were true to yourself and true to your values and true to your ethics and true to who you are. And I think that that's a big takeaway message for those that when you're thinking about passions and interests, you also want to think about your values. You want to think about, okay, how do I turn this,
yes, that's right.
Right. And your purpose can only be achieved through your value system. And so that's what you've done, Charlie. And I think that so many people listening who want to advocate, who really want to reach that next level of activism can think about you, even if they're not conservative. I want everybody to understand that you don't have to be exactly like Charlie. Charlie even said, I respect political diversity and I'm happy to speak to people with different opinions because that's what enriches our life, right? If we're in an echo chamber completely, then we'll never be able to learn about other experiences. But Charlie, I think it's important that before we log off, you mentioned Neurozion and the cups that you've created for spicy chai. You also are working on a lot of other things. I know with the menorah and trying to link the menorah to the autism. I know that you were featured with somebody from the Knesset, I believe, that you introduced that to recently.
Yes, that's right. I went to the Conservative Party conference a few weeks ago. Whilst I was there, first I went to a memorial service for the Manchester stabbing attack victims outside that synagogue. Really broke my heart. I felt really, really sad and angry about it as well. Well, I was in Manchester at the time, and a memorial service was held outside Manchester Cathedral that day. I went along to give my condolences and show my solidarity with the Jewish people there. And it was a very good moment to show myself to be there with them. They were very thankful and grateful that I was, in armor in their defense, so to speak. Well, there was a member of the Israeli Knesset there, Sharon Haskell. She's the Israeli foreign minister. She gave a speech there. And then later on in the evening, she was at the Conservative Party conference where the party has got these friendship groups, right? Conservative Friends of Israel. Well, our Conservative Friends of Israel event, she also gave a speech there. And I got a chance to go up and shake hands with her. And I told her about what I was doing and standing up for the Jewish people. And she was very pleased. And I even gave her a new menorah badge, telling her that I was making the autistic people were recognizing the value and true spirit of Judaism within their lives. And I even gave a flyer to her assistant, who was quite curious about what I've been doing. And, I took Sharon's card off of him. And perhaps one day, if I'm fortunate enough to show my appreciation to Israel in a very dignified way, I might get a chance to speak at the Knesset.
Wow. After all the hard work, I think maybe you deserve a place over there to speak, but that would be definitely something beautiful that I would tune into 100%. Yeah. So beyond all these things, all these connections, like you said, you're a master networker. So you show up here and before you're speaking to representatives of the Knesset, which I know that you're someone who has met many famous people over the years, many incredible people. And that's also part of your ability to go out there and network, which I think is also something people should think about when they have a path. Go find other like-minded people. Go find people that even if you think that they're too famous for you, a lot of times these people are willing to speak to you. And I found that too, that there are people that I think wouldn't want to speak to me. And then I start this podcast and the people that I thought would never want to talk to me are like, sure, I'll come on. So you never know where it's going to go. And I think, Charlie, you've taken so many social risks. And at the risk, no pun intended, of sounding cliche, it is these social risks that I think ultimately lead you to find more meaning and purpose in your own life. And I feel like you're living a life of purpose and gratitude and meaning. And it's something that I think everybody can take away from this, because if you're neurodivergent or you're supporting or a professional, think about how to uplift yourselves. Or if you're supporting a neurodivergent individual, think about how you can uplift them so that they could get to that activism place that if they want.
Well, I know a really good friend who I've known for 2 years. Her name's Lexi Gold. She was really inspired by me and I helped to, motivate her. And just as she was finding her political awakenings, she came free from the woke and I ended up becoming her long-distance best friend. We talk out about autism advocacy together. She's even, and in fact, she's so inspired and determined now that she even has ambitions to be a psychologist of some sort. She runs her own autism-led support group called Hero. And hopefully, I reckon she would probably make a very good CEO, just as I am.
And a hero. She's a hero and a CEO. Yes. Wow, that's great. See, that's the thing, is that all these puzzle pieces come together. I know that I'm making a reference to your book about the puzzle, but it really is just a puzzle where you find the pieces, you put them together, and then you just figure out what it is that your life really needs and how you can service others. And that's what you've been doing, Charlie, is not just servicing in terms of trying to figure out what's best for you, but really helping to service the community at large for the things that you believe in. And so I just want to thank you so much for taking this time to be with me here on Unmasking Social so that others can be inspired if they want to take that activism journey. There are things that you can do. Charlie has shared so many things that you can do to overcome some of the obstacles that might be in your way. And I know people can find you pretty much everywhere, Charlie. You're omnipresent. You're on, Instagram. People can find you there, right? Under Charlie, under
Instagram, Facebook. Oh, yes. And you can find me, I better give my social media connections. You can find me on Instagram on my personal page, AC_Keeble. There's also the Instagram page of Neurozion, @Neurozion. Oh, and of course, the website, www.neurozion.com. Get yourself some fantastic T-shirts and other sorts of gear, and you'll definitely look like a vibrant, spicy guy. I'm sure that's a promise. I'm also doing my advocacy work in stand-up the Jewish community with a group called Stop the Hate. And what else? So, yes, I've got my self-published books, which you can buy on Amazon.
Yeah.
And
it's a lot, Charlie. That's a lot. Yeah. That's more than I produce. So good job, Charlie. But thank you so much for taking the time today. I know that we'll definitely be in touch. And thank you just for sharing everything, being vulnerable and really sharing all the things that have helped you get to this place, because we need more activists out there. We need more people. And I think one of the amazing advocates are our autistic advocates who have such special interests and are so knowledgeable about topics that I only can scratch the surface with. So I find it so great and inspiring. So on that note, Charlie, I just want to thank you for spending time with me, and we'll log off, but I want to wish you a great afternoon there in London, kind of morning here, almost afternoon here.
Yes, I've got quite a lot of long distance American friends who I video chat frequently. So it's an honor to be on a podcast by a very good neurodivergent person and activist such as yourself, Sharon. I really love this podcast. In fact, I've listened to quite a few episodes. I think you have a very good future in making many media appearances yourself.
Oh, thank you, Charlie. That means a lot coming from you. Thank you so much.